Money King. Early in the morning, as the sun began to cast its first golden rays across the Nairobi slums, Jojo was already hard at work. He had packed his mandazis, the sweet aroma of his creation filling his tiny shanty house. However, just as he stepped out of his home, the familiar cacophony of his noisy neighbors fighting once again reached his ears. This time, it was the woman who struggled to enter her home, met with resistance by her vengeful husband. With a sigh, Jojo walked away from the scene, hoping they would eventually find peace. Undeterred, Jojo made his way through the bustling streets of Nairobi. His destination was the construction site where he used to labor, but now, he had something different to offer: his freshly baked mandazis. On his way to the construction site, Jojo encountered matatu conductors calling out to people to board their vehicles. Recognizing an opportunity, Jojo approached them, offering his mandazis to the conductors and the passengers waiting to embark. His entrepreneurial spirit shone as he managed to sell a significant portion of the mandazis he had brought with him. Arriving at the construction site, Jojo was greeted by curious construction workers. It had been a while since he last set foot on this familiar ground, the ambulance's siren still fresh in his memory. The workers swarmed around him, surprised to see Jojo walking again. Jojo shared the purpose of his visit, acknowledging his ongoing recovery and his dependence on their support by purchasing his mandazis. One of the workers, his stomach grumbling with hunger, seized the opportunity, opting for Jojo's tasty mandazis over a long walk for sustenance. His fellow workers followed suit, enjoying the delightful snack. Soon, even the construction site manager arrived, puzzled by Jojo's presence. His initial anger at the unauthorized sales on the site turned into amusement, and he allowed Jojo to stay on one condition: free breakfast every day. As the morning progressed, Jojo managed to sell out half of his mandazis, a surprise and delight for him. He contemplated the goodwill of the construction workers and the manager, grateful for the opportunity he'd seized. But Jojo had to wait until the evening to collect his hard-earned wages from the construction workers. So, he bid goodbye to Abraham, who departed earlier in the day. With his earnings in hand, Jojo set out on his journey back home, winding through the crowded streets of Nairobi. His route took him through the local market, where traders lamented the aggressive tactics of cartels collecting illegal revenues from them. Jojo couldn't help but notice one of the cartels, a face from his past, one of the thugs who had mugged him. He proceeded with caution to avoid drawing attention. Worried for his safety and Abraham's, Jojo made his way to Abraham's house, eager to share the unsettling encounter with his friend. When he recounted the story and expressed his concerns, Abraham realized the impending danger, well aware of the conflict between Jojo and the thug from their time in prison. Although Abraham tried to downplay the situation, Jojo's fears were palpable. They exchanged pleasantries and Jojo left to purchase the ingredients for the mandazis he was to prepare for the next day. He was still keeping a wary eye out for any potential threats. But unfortunately, he didn't know he had been trailed by the thug's minion on his way to Abraham's place and his own house. That night, Jojo labored over the stove, making batch after batch of mandazis, as his mind danced with concerns about the looming danger from the vengeful thug. Unbeknownst to him, his newfound business and his life had become entangled in a web of uncertainty. The following morning, he waited for Abraham as he began to sell some of the mandazis he had prepared earlier. Once they were together, they set off for the construction site, where Jojo continued to sell his sought-after mandazis to conductors and passengers. A sense of success enveloped Jojo as he completed his second day of selling, earning 3 times what he had as a laborer. They walked home together, a spring in their step, but the shadow of impending danger loomed closer. As they parted ways, Jojo spotted his previously quarrelsome neighbors, now sharing tender moments of affection. It was a stark reminder that love had its way of working even in the most unlikely of places. Upon reaching his shanty house, Jojo's mind was consumed with thoughts of mandazi making, but an unexpected knock at the door disrupted his focus. Cautiously, he picked up a piece of wood, ready for defense, and swung the door open. Expecting the vengeful thug who he had punched during their time in prison, Jojo's defenses were up. The thug had never forgotten that act of revenge, leading to this dangerous standoff. A slight hint of regret colored Jojo's thoughts, as he feared what the consequences might be. But to his surprise, the visitor was none other than Abraham, looking troubled and uneasy, a stark contrast to how he had left him. Abraham's arrival brought with it the burden of unwelcome news that threatened to engulf them. Jojo ushered his friend in, bracing himself for what Abraham was about to reveal. As they settled in, Abraham began to speak, and the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. His child was missing, kidnapped, taken away by the dangerous cartel that had targeted their family. Abraham's wife had received threats from the untouchables, demanding extra special taxes for their home's security. They had dismissed the warnings as mere intimidation, but their child's abduction had turned it all too real. Abraham had approached the police, but their refusal to get involved had led him to Jojo's doorstep. Jojo, feeling the weight of responsibility, immediately offered his help. He recognized that the child's disappearance was in part his own doing, a consequence of the enmity he had sparked during his prison days. The gravity of the situation was clear in Jojo's eyes as he assured Abraham that they would bring his child home safely. But as Abraham's distress echoed in their shared concern, Jojo suddenly remembered his already burning mandazes, the sizzling but smoky aroma having drawn him back to reality. Swiftly, they turned off the stove and rushed out, their determination for action outpacing their fears. Together, Jojo and Abraham headed into an uncertain future, their anger, love for family, and the desire for justice fueling their resolve. Will Abraham manage to find and rescue his child with Jojo's assistance? Don't forget to like and subscribe to ensure you don't miss the upcoming episode of Money King.